Welcome to the Cripescast. I'm your host, Charlie Behrens. We are powered by Everlight Solar, and here's this week's episode. Folks, welcome to the Cripescast. This week, we are talking about Aldo Leopold. He is one of the greatest conservationists ever to live. He is born in Iowa, but I think Wisconsin's going to claim him. As a Wisconsinite, I'll just say he's Wisconsinite. One of the greatest ecological writers of our time. A Sand County Almanac is celebrating 75 years this year, and we are talking with Buddy Huffaker, who is the president and executive director of the Aldo Leopold Foundation. He's been there for 20 years. Great guy. He's also essentially in charge with taking care of Aldo's farm, the land that he based a lot of A Sand County Almanac off of. And in addition to the great environmental work the foundation is continuing to do today, we dive into all that, but a lot of this is really just diving into the work of Aldo Leopold and what he has done to essentially getting your average person to care about the environment, which I think he did successfully 75 years ago, and that work still needs to be done and still is being done. So anyway, we have a real fun conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. And before we get to that conversation, I want to remind you, we're still raising money for Doctors Without Borders. You can go to doctorswithoutborders.org to donate today. And also, I'm going to be on the road, ladies and gentlemen. We got Christmas coming up, and nothing says I love you like I just bought this ticket off the internet. So head on over to charliebehrens.com. I'm going to be in New Jersey, Kentucky, New York, Cincinnati, whole bunch of other places. Check it out, charliebehrens.com. Click on the tour section. Thank you all for listening. And here's my conversation with Buddy Huffaker. Thank you so much for coming on.
Excited to be able to be in conversation.
So 75 years, Sand County Almanac is celebrating an anniversary this year. And what do you think it is about this book and Aldo Leopold that has transcended decade after decade after decade of environmentalists and conservationists?
Well, I think, Charlie, you got to start with just Leopold's excellent writing. I mean, he conveys complicated scientific ideas into just kind of really elegant little poems almost. And I like to say he kind of just captures what a lot of us feel when we're outdoors, looking at wildlife, hunting, fishing, hiking. And he just can say it better than any of us. And so when you read his writing, you kind of immediately like, oh, yeah, that's what I think. That's how I feel. But I just can't say it that well.
A Sand County Almanac is a book that I read, in college. And then I've always had, it's like one that sits on the shelf and you don't really. But my sister actually just gave me a copy of it again for, because she was staying at my place. And it was really cool. So I just started reading it again and kind of rediscovering it a little bit. And there was this one passage, I think it was early on in the sort of collection of essays, and it was about cutting down this tree at his farm. And he goes through all the tree had been struck by lightning, and it starts off with him burning the wood. And it goes from burning the wood to thinking about cutting the tree down, and then cutting the tree down, it's him and the guy with the saw, and they're cutting through these rings of the tree. So he goes back in time, and each ring of the tree talks about what happened, what that tree saw, and how that tree saw like the last, like the last elks leave the Midwest. Or, I mean, there were elks there, even Elkhart, Indiana used to be named Elksheart, Indiana, And so he just goes back in time, just using the rings of the trees. And then I was out in the garage right before this, actually just sawing a 4x4, and I looked down and I got the center piece. So you're looking at the rings, and I thought about that. So, I mean, it connects in such a cool way. Everybody knows the rings of the trees, and everybody can go back in time, and sort of he picks out these historical references and shows the decline of the turkey from Wisconsin back then. And reading it now, the turkey has come back. But other things have left Wisconsin. So it's just the idea of time and of what we've lost and what we've regained as a society. It's just cool. It's cool to see.
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the best essays, The Good Oak. And he does a great job, like you say, of kind of capturing a moment in the 1940s, really when things were kind of grim for the outdoors and conservation. We were losing the elk and the turkey. And he, his essay, Marshland Elegy, presumes that sandhill cranes are going to go extinct or at least get removed from the state of Wisconsin. And so now we can read like this call that, hey, we got to wake up and take care of these things that make sure we have clean air, clean water, healthy wildlife habitats. And we have some success stories. We have cranes back, we have turkeys back, we have elk back. So it's really kind of fun to read this really insightful ecologist who could assess the time and look back and then assess where we've come and where we still have to go.
Yeah. It's cool to find that combination of great writer and environmental, ecologist. I don't even know if environmentalist was a thing back then, but that's what it takes in order to like break through. I mean, I feel like, how do you feel right now the environmental movement is in terms of conveying the importance of the issue? Because how many years in a row have we heard that, like, what is it? The clock, the doomsday clock is, it is seconds closer to, nothing really breaks through on the environment. I don't think. I think, well, let me just say it. It's harder to get stuff on the environment to break through. And I'm not sure why, because it's something that affects us all. And yet we all collectively kind of don't care.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think Leopold would have suggested that was true even when he was writing his book, right? Like he was writing it, asking people to care. And kind of it was the culmination of decades of working and not getting people to care or think about these things. So I think the challenge may still be the same. Leopold also had the benefit of he was writing when there just weren't as many other voices out there, both positive to care about these things and, the challenges of competing with social media and all this kind of information flow that we get as individuals these days. So I think it's just a more competitive environment, kind of so to speak. And then, it's really just kind of an ongoing interesting dilemma because surveys show people actually care more about the environment and know more about the environment and how it operates than ever before in history. And yet, what does that mean? How do we actually take care of it? It's still so challenging and complicated that we're not making the progress we probably need to on several fronts.
Yeah, and I think that is true. I think people do. If you ask them, is it an issue? Should we take care of it? I think yes and yes. I think what you probably just have is industry is really good at sort of saying they're doing the environmentally right thing, but then not really doing the environmentally right thing. And collectively as a whole, between, and we're all guilty of it. I'm very guilty of it. I fly for my work, and all that sort of stuff. So, but it's the idea of, saying this is recyclable, for instance, for plastic, knowing damn well it is not going to get recycled and that only a very small percentage of plastic bottles actually get recycled, but people feel like they're doing the right thing. So I think the game has become less about getting people to care about it, because people now care about it. So then those companies realize that and they're like, all right, let's give them some to allow them to keep using our product, like greenwashing or whatever, even though we know this is just making the problem harder. So it's like continuing to re-educate and like break through, and it's tough. I think people don't respond well to facts necessarily. It's more emotion. Bringing it back to Aldo Leopold, that was what he was really good at, was about getting to the emotion of it.
Well, yeah, I think it's several things you point out there. One is, Leopold was ultimately a storyteller, right? He was trying to create these little vignettes that people, whether you're cutting a tree down or watching a crane fly by or out hunting grouse, that you would think about your connection to the natural world and how you should care about it and for it. And so there's there's science in the book, but it's not really a scientific book, right? It's a book of essays and stories that help bring to life the land around us. And then the other thing is, and Leopold realized this, it's not easy. One of my favorite lines out of the book is, in our attempt to make conservation easy, we've made it trivial. And it's not trivial. It is really damn hard. As you just pointed out, like there are all these things that kind of work against us and kind of motivate bad behavior, and to line up our values and our economies and our ecosystems, that just ain't easy to do.
It's funny. It's funny because what he just said in that sentence was exactly what I was rambling on for like ever trying to say. Speaking of which, he has a really good knack of summing up a whole thing with just one sentence. Like there's this one sentence that I love, sort of in the age of AI, really, and this information age, is what a dull world if we knew all about geese. It's like one of my favorite lines in the whole thing, just because there's, I think we're all chasing this like all-knowing thing, this thing that will work for us essentially. And then what a dull world it would be, with taking out the mystery. But at the same time, you see why humanity wants to progress and keep going down these roads. And what do you think the marriage is between technology and the environment? And what do you think Aldo Leopold would say, were he alive today, about sort of what's going on with AI, the amount of carbon that takes, and also the potential for AI to help resolve some complicated environmental issues?
Yeah, this is a line not out of A Sand County Almanac, but out of his other writings, where he describes the oldest task in human history is to live on a piece of land without spoiling it. And in that essay, he's talking about how technology and innovation kind of make our lives better, and yet, if we're not careful, in the end, kind of undermine, what really makes a good life. And so he was always a little suspicious of technology. And I think what he was really just asking us to do is be more thoughtful and more intentional about where and how we allow technology into our lives, so it's working for us, not kind of knowingly or unknowingly against us. And I think that's where getting the frame right is still the real challenge. And I'll quote another Wisconsinite, Gaylord Nelson, former governor and senator of the state of Wisconsin, the conceiver of and kind of founder of Earth Day. So, I don't know your age, Charlie, but I haven't known a world that hasn't included Earth Day. Like it happened in the spring of 1970. I was born in 1970.
Are you asking me if you think I was born before 1970? Is that what you're doing right now?
I'm just putting it out there. Like,
I'm going to get a better moisturizer right now. That's what I'm going to do. Sorry, I interrupted because,
but he had this great line. Gaylord Nelson had this great line that, it's really important that we understand that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the environment. And so, when you think about that line, what he's saying is, if we understood that all of our health and wealth flowed from a healthy ecosystem, again, clean air, clean water, healthy food, the joys of seeing abundant wildlife, then we would align technology in our economy to deliver those things, as opposed to an extra 50 cents, profit margin on some widget that we create. And, I'm slightly naively optimistic, but I think that's possible to us if we just kind of really are diligent about doing that. And again, asking technology in our economy to deliver the things that really make life possible. Let's start there, and then kind of rich in a broad sense.
Yeah. I think that's very, very well said. Is that just look at all the billions of dollars we spend every year due to the adverse effects of climate change. Whether that be rebuilding Florida or this year with the hurricanes in South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee. So much money that just goes from the federal government, from FEMA to people, and that's money that's just wasted. That had we taken care of it. And now, I mean, Malibu is on fire today, for instance,
Right.
and everything. So it's, it's just realizing, finding a way to connect the environment to the economy for your average person who's thinking about it. The problem is it's not an immediate hit. It's not like if I do this, then this happens tomorrow. And I feel like the world kind of revolves around the stock market, which is all about tomorrow's gains. And there's not really an easy way around that, other than maybe to just talk about that or find a way for
I
that
think
to
that's
hit.
right. I think, more of it's conversation and just, again, kind of assessing where real value and kind of wealth comes from. But it's also making sure we do point out examples. Like, most people don't really realize that New York City gets its drinking water. What is this? We're talking 10 million people get their drinking water from the Catskills, and that it's a protected watershed where the rain falls up there, infiltrates through the ground, gets naturally cleaned. And, instead of $1 billion water treatment plant. So we have these examples of kind of ecological solutions to providing the goods and services we need. We just don't really kind of highlight them. And then, to your point, kind of put them in understanding the short-term versus long-term investments and benefits.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a real art form in doing that, though, which is why I think this book continues to resonate, because it found a way to do that, not just in the time it was written, but sort of through the centuries, or not the centuries, through the decades. And I think it has certainly inspired me to think about, how do you say this in a way that people really care? But even beyond that, even forget getting other people to care, coming up with different ideas that can help fix the problem in a way that like immediately almost makes money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you could find a really environmentally efficient way to sequester carbon, to get carbon out of the atmosphere, you'd make a lot of money. If you could find a way to remove microplastic from the water, in a sort of in a more efficient way than what it currently is, you make a lot of money. So it's almost like putting a bounty on these environmental problems. If you come up with a product that can do this, I think that's interesting too. And then also highlight the problem as you do it.
Yeah. So you're going to solve that for us?
No, I tried. I'm not very good at it. I'm just working on building a woodworking bench out there. I don't know if you know where my handyman skills are. They're not quite there. I'm just throwing this out there for someone smarter than me to figure out, or someone, hell, if you really want to use AI, use it to figure out that situation. That'd be interesting. So anyways, before we
here's a story I want to share, Charlie, because you were talking about you were in your wood shop, and sometimes it's great. Aldo Leopold was this amazing thinker ahead of his time, but it's also good to remember he was just human like the rest of us. So he had a wood shop in his basement and built a handmade cedar strip canoe, only to realize when he was trying to get it out of the basement, it was too big to get out of the basement. So we all run into our own challenges.
I feel a lot better now about a few things. That's hilarious. So speaking of which, he kind of comes from like, sort of utilitarian standpoint on the environment. And to maybe put that more plain English, he's a guy who didn't see like the environment isn't just here to never touch and not use. He was like, how do we use it, and how do we like maintain like a healthy ecosystem with it? I mean, his dad was a carpenter, woodworker as well. So like, is that where that came from for him?
Yeah, I think Leopold, that's the other reason I think it comes out in his writing in A Sand County Almanac, is he's trying to bridge these worlds of the John Muir, just fence it off, protect it. It's beautiful. We're just going to kind of look at it, but we can't touch it. And then the utilitarian mindset that was embodied, and Muir was a little bit older than Leopold. The other was Gifford Pinchot, who was the first chief of the Forest Service, and he was, all about the wise use. And Leopold tries to bridge this gap, kind of recognize, we're going to have to use resources. I mean, we are living organisms, and yet we need them to be healthy so that we're healthy. And I think it comes from a family who, had a natural resource-based business. It came from his love of hunting and fishing and hiking and just being outdoors and engaging the world. But yet also having the chance and opportunity to kind of be in some really beautiful, special places and, stop for a moment and realize, wow, this is breathtaking. How do we protect it? So that's kind of his unique role in the whole conservation environmental history, is he's kind of that straddle between total use and total protection.
Yeah. It's a kind of a good one, I think, for a lot of people to see, or just to grab. Like you can grab onto the love for it, or the economic benefits, or the beauty benefits, or anyone in between, and that's the thing where even farmers resonate with Aldo Leopold. And same with conservationists.
Yeah, I often kind of use, like, Aldo Leopold has been on the cover of Sierra magazine, which is a pretty, kind of leftist protectionist group, and also on the cover of Deer and Deer Hunting magazine. And I'm like, there's nobody who has been covered by both of those publications, and the story is positive about both of them. Like they, they kind of, whether you're a hunter or a vegan, like there's something in Leopold that's like, there's something in his writing that helps me understand how I see the world and feel about it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And where did Aldo Leopold's love for the environment come from, and when was it kind of realized for him? Give us a little bit of his backstory.
Well, so he grew up, he's born in 1887. That's a long time ago now, on the Mississippi River in Iowa. And just kind of from an early age, he loved to be outside, and his mother and father kind of encouraged him to be outside, to hunt and hike. And then, as you mentioned, his family had this natural, they made furniture. So he also then saw the big cutover happen in the upper Midwest, and kind of began to wonder, like, well, where are these resources going to come from to keep making furniture and building houses and doing those kind of things? And that led him to a career in forestry, and that led him to the U.S. Forest Service, which was kind of an emerging conservation effort at the time in the early 1900s. And from there, he just kept getting these experiences of seeing wild places, and both where they were taken good care of and where they weren't, and began developing these philosophies of how people need to recognize their connection to the natural world. And then a transfer in the Forest Service brought him back to the Midwest, and ultimately he got to pursue his real love, which was wildlife management, at the University of Wisconsin, where he was the first professor of that program in the whole country.
It's very cool to see Wisconsin somehow at the forefront of a lot of like environmental movements. Like you mentioned, Gaylord Nelson, the guy who, brought up Earth Day. Aldo Leopold, John Muir had connections to Wisconsin.
Yep.
It's pretty sweet. Where did he become a good writer? Do we know that?
Well, that's a great question too. I mean, we always say he became a good writer by writing. As a communicator yourself, you could probably attest to the more you do it, the better you get. And he wrote, he journaled, he wrote letters when he was away at school back to his parents. And then even those essays, as you're thumbing through there, like he would write them, and then it was called the cooler. He'd put them in his desk drawer and he'd walk away from them, and then he'd come back and then he'd rewrite them. And then he was really open to challenging editing. So he'd have his wife read it. He'd have his students read it. He'd have colleagues read it, and he would take that feedback. And then you can see after those edits, that he would rework the essay. So it was really kind of a labor of love, in that he put the time and energy into, coming up with the content, putting it on paper, letting it digest, then taking feedback and constantly improving it.
That's really cool as a writer, listening to that process. And, I think that's what, he wasn't just throwing the first thing out of his mind saying this will connect with people. He was testing it hard with people, and that's what I think, made this thing go from just his ideas about the environment to actually resonating with people as he tested it like that.
You're exactly right. And one of the things I love is, again, when you kind of get deeper into Leopold and you see his other writings, some of which then would get reshaped and ultimately appear in a Sand County Almanac. When he's writing for the Garden Club, he expresses these ideas in one way. When he's writing to the civil engineering department, it's different. When it's to a general hunting audience, it's different. And so, kind of knowing your audience, sometimes we forget about, we just try to, like you say, come up with that one right line and think it's going to work everywhere. And, we gotta connect with those people we're really trying to reach and communicate in a way that they're going to be interested and willing to receive it.
Yeah. And I think one of his best tools in doing that is coming from his own admission that he's messed things up himself. And that would be it's one of my favorite essays, but it's like Thinking Like a Mountain, that's kind of like, that's the big one. But this is basically a story where he kills a wolf. And because back then you saw wolves, you'd kill them, because less wolves meant more deer. And the ending of it, I think, first of all, yeah, I mean, I'd almost want to read the whole freaking thing, but I won't. I just want to read the ending of it because I think this is really cool. We all strive for safety, prosperity, comfort, long life, and dullness. The deer strives with his supple legs, the cowman with trap and poison, the statesman with pen, the most of us with machines, votes, and dollars. But it all comes to the same thing, peace in our time. A measure of success in this is all well enough, and perhaps is a requisite to objective thinking, but too much safety seems to yield only danger in the long run. Perhaps this is behind Thoreau's dictum, in wilderness is the salvation of the world. Perhaps this is the hidden meaning in the howl of the wolf, long known among mountains, but seldom perceived among men. I think it's so freaking cool because it basically says, like, we need wolves. Like, without wolves, the land goes to shit, and the deer you're even trying to save, they go to shit, or the cattle you're trying to preserve, they go to shit. And also, the wolf is kind of that natural regulator. Maybe that wolf is getting your deer because that needs to happen in order to save more of the deer. And we see that with chronic wasting disease. And we see that with sort of the overgrazing of certain lands and what happens to those lands. They get degraded. So it's almost like the thing that was here before us knows more than us, that being the mountain and the general environment.
Well, again, I love what you're picking up on. I think that's one of the other beauties is I kind of sometimes describe a Sand County Almanac as like you're going for a walk with your grandfather in the woods, right? He's kind of like pointing things out and you're learning these lessons. It's not real preachy, but there's always kind of some education that happens. But then in other parts of the book, he kind of puts you, and this is challenging to do, but he kind of helps you try to see the world from the deer's eyes or from the mountain's eyes. And so like all of a sudden, like, wow, like, this is challenging. Like, it's not just how I see the world. Like, I got to start to think of these other vantage points. And I think that was relatively new at the time Leopold was writing that kind of device to put people outside of themselves and try to understand their world around them. And then, yeah, the core point of that whole essay is that, is kind of to reveal he had blood on his hands. He didn't always behave exactly perfect or know the right way to behave. But as he learned, he was able to improve and refine his thinking and actions. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the humility that a lot of people in the environmental world don't often have, you know, because it's easy to get. And I would say I could be just as guilty of not only doing the bad environmental stuff, but being all, feeling like I'm doing the right thing and other people aren't about it just as much as anybody. But so I think it's good to see that sort of admission of it in this book. And the phrase like the most of us with machines and votes and dollars, that hasn't changed at all. So it's fun to see like the timelessness in this thing. especially 75 years now. I don't know why. I just looked at my watch when I said 75 years from now. Like I was trying to. How much time has it
long
been
since we started talking, Charlie?
No. It's just I anytime I am talking about time, I reflexively look at my watch. Excuse the interruption, folks, but I want to let you know that Cripescast is powered and presented by Everlight Solar. We are doing our best for the environment and doing real good by our pocketbook. We got the solar panels up there on the roof, and they turn all these lights and cameras and microphones on. It's real good. If you want to see if the old solar panel deal is good for you, go to everlightsolar.com. They'll come out for a free consultation. everlightsolar.com. And ladies and gentlemen, Fleet Farm is there for you for your Christmas shopping list. Okay, everything your loved ones want, you can find at Fleet Farm, whether it be ice fishing gear, new boots, new shoes, shovels, for God's sakes, lawn care. They got that there, snow blowers, hunting gear. Oh my gosh, anything you need. Plumbing stuff too. They got it all. Lumber. I mean, you name it, they got it. Go to Fleet Farm and make your loved ones real happy. And be careful. You might see Santa there. I hear he shops at Fleet Farm from time to time when the elves can't make a P-trap. And finally, folks, check out mantougmint.com. We've got all your Midwest merch, T-shirts, sweatshirts, playing cards, cribbage boards, koozies, you name it. We got it there too, mantougmint.com. Click on the merch section. Get yourself some last-minute Christmas gifts. All right, folks, that's all for now. Let's get back to my conversation with Buddy.
You know, one of the other neat things about the book and its legacy that has been fun to kind of reflect on and highlight this year is your point about kind of Wisconsin leading the world and kind of being this ability to kind of attract people's attention and consideration. And, you know, the book has been translated into 16 different languages now. So, you know, Leopold, and when you read the book, it is very Wisconsin focused. I mean, if you've lived in this state very long, there are images that he will describe like, oh, yeah, I saw that. I saw that up north. Or I saw that down by Madison or driving to Milwaukee. And so he's literally taken Wisconsin to the world now through these translations and other people in other parts of the world trying to think about these conceptual aspects about how we relate to each other in the natural world, but also getting this glimpse into what life in Wisconsin might be like and what a cool place it would be. And we literally have people come from all over the world now to see the farm and the landscape that inspired that book.
That's pretty cool. So tell me about that, by the way. Tell me about the farm and tell me like when Aldo bought it and what it was before and what it is now.
So he was teaching at the university. They had a hunting cabin down in Arkansas, and that was, of course, a stretch to get down there at that point. And so they were looking for a little farm where the family could go on the weekends. And they found 35 crummy little acres along the Wisconsin River, kind of equidistant between Baraboo, Portage, and Wisconsin Dells, for those that know that region. And they bought it. There was basically no vegetation on the property. The farmer had lost the land to the bank for back taxes. It's on pure sand, effectively, from the Wisconsin River. And there was this one little structure on it. There was a chicken coop because literally there was frozen chicken manure in it with the first time they went to visit it. And they kind of cleaned it up and it became what they called the shack. It was just enough to get them out of the elements. And then they started planting thousands and thousands of trees, restored prairie, planted a sugar maple grove, and kind of restored it back to health. It's looked at as one of the early ecological restoration projects in the world. Replicating some of the stuff that was happening at the University of Wisconsin Arboretum. And that's kind of he'd been a public servant with the Forest Service. He'd been an educator. Now here he's just a regular old guy trying to take care of the farm, having to pay for all the work and, maintain the property. And he begins to realize that, hey, this conservation thing is going to take everybody. And so that's when he starts writing these essays that are designed to reach, he'd been writing technical papers. These essays were designed to reach more general audiences and engage people in these ideas. And so it's that kind of intersection of the family farm and its restoration with trying to reach a bigger audience that inspires him to write the book.
And he wrote it right before his death, right?
Yeah, so he'd worked on it for almost 15 years, been rejected 4 to 5 times, kind of depends on how you read, either rejection letters or no responses. And 1 week before he passed away of a heart attack at the age of 61, he finally received word from Oxford University Press that they would publish his manuscript. So he very nearly never saw it. Well, and actually never saw it in print. He almost didn't even know it was going to be printed.
And he died fighting a fire, didn't he, on his buddy's land?
So the shack and farm is along the Wisconsin River. It's now a National Historic Landmark. The site where he passed away is where the Leopold Center now stands, and it's our offices and interpretive center. People come here before they go down to the shack, and we have a memorial site where he suffered a heart attack. There was a farmhouse here. A brush fire escaped, and he and his wife and youngest daughter came over to help suppress the fire. They kind of broke up. Leopold suffered a heart attack and died while trying to suppress the fire to protect it from kind of getting out of control. It's the
most Midwest way to go out, man.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I'll come over and help you fight that fire. No problem. Oh, there we go. Actually, who was it? Was it Curly Lambeau? I think Curly Lambeau also died cutting his neighbor's grass, I think.
No kidding. Yeah.
I think so. I think
communitarian, civic-minded individuals that,
That's the way you want to go out, you know?
Yeah.
That's nice.
By the way, since I know the Packers are a strong theme through your programs, the best we know is that in 1937, Aldo Leopold did not know who the Packers were because he asked his son Starker, who was listening to a game on the radio, who are these Packers? So
really,
he wasn't clued in quite yet. I don't know if that changed in the last decade of his life.
How did you know that? Was that in his journals?
It's a story that his oldest son Starker would tell.
That's fun. That's funny.
The kids knew who the Packers were. They weren't all that clueless.
So how does it work now? I mean, his kids have all since passed, but you are sort of in control of all his writings and everything. Is that accurate or no?
So then, in 1980, all 5 of the kids were amazing scientists and conservationists in their own right. They all had decorated careers. We just lost the youngest child, Estella, this last year at the age of 97. So they were productive for long periods of time in their own disciplines. But in 1982, kind of recognizing that their father's work was just becoming more and more important, they created the Aldo Leopold Foundation, and they entrusted it with 2 assets. One was the farm, and the other was the rights to their father's writings. So the Leopold Foundation, now that operates out of Baraboo and the Leopold Center, we continue to own and manage the farm, and we work with neighboring landowners to kind of manage about 4,000 acres for wildlife habitat purposes. We have people come to see the shack from all over the world and kind of learn what happened there and the history of this book and the idea of a land ethic. And then we're the executor of his literary estate. So we help bring the book out in new languages and new formats and, just keep the idea alive.
Who's got like his, he wrote a bunch of journals and all that sort of stuff. Where's all that stuff live?
Most of that is held at the University of Wisconsin in Madison in the Steenbach Library. So they house the physical connection. We've digitized all of that. So if you want to go thumb through his journals, it's all digitized and transcribed on their website. And then we have a few of them on display at the center just, for demonstration purposes.
That's crazy that, did he say he wanted his journals published? Is there any weird stuff in there?
We keep looking. We haven't found anything
he probably put those in a different box.
Maybe. Yeah. Those were destroyed at some point.
Burned in that fire or something. That's really interesting that you can go do that though. And roughly how many pages are we talking if you wanted to read everything he had ever written?
Oh my goodness. I should know that. It's a lot.
Have you read it all? Have you read everything?
Well, there are scholars who have. I have read a fair amount of it and kind of dipped in and out, but I get to use their scholarship and research so that I haven't had to read every word.
Yeah, gotcha. That's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah.
It's very cool to see. And then you got your start. Like what was your personal journey?
So I grew up in central Illinois. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to admit that, though I do have my own Packer origin story. My second grade teacher, as I tell the story, so my mother just kind of refuted this. So I'll put it out here to your audience. Maybe somebody can help vet this, though. If I'm wrong, I'm going to be really shattered and disappointed. But my second grade teacher, Mrs. Levante in Champaign, Illinois, was, as I say it, was Bart Starr's niece.
Oh.
So though I was in Bears country, from second grade on, I have been a Packers fan, back to Lynn Dickey and Randy White and, James Lofton, James Jefferson. I was a Packers fan through and through. So,
buddy, you made a good decision.
Yeah. Thankfully now. At any rate, I was a pretty suburban kid, and in high school, got a random job at a soil testing laboratory because it paid well. And in the 80s, there weren't many summer jobs. And I got interested in soil science and agronomy. And so then went to Purdue University and studied kind of landscape architecture and plant ecology. And then went to the University of Illinois for graduate school because Madison wouldn't give me any money. So that was, I stayed.
Midwest cheap.
Yep. And, it turned out good. I went to school in Illinois and get to live in Wisconsin. If I would have gone to school up here, who knows? Maybe I would have had to live in Chicago. That'd be terrible. And I came to the Leopold Foundation right as Nina Leopold Bradley, one of Aldo's children who had retired back to the area and kind of been the family storyteller and convener for decades, was ready for her second retirement. And I was supposed to be here for a field season, and 28 years later, they haven't figured out how to get rid of me.
Oh, that's good. That's very good. You've evaded it that long, huh?
Yeah.
You must be doing a real good job there. So congratulations on that. What do you see as, so you guys, you're preserving the works, you're preserving and spreading sort of a Sand County Almanac and other works of Aldo Leopold around, and you were preserving the land. And what other initiatives do you guys see as important? Like if you were to have unlimited money and take on maybe another thing, what would you say are the biggest environmental concerns right now?
Well, so for starters, we don't preserve the land. You really only preserve pickles, and we try to manage the land.
Manage it, yes, of course, yes,
because it's a dynamic system. And then another important project I want to get out there is we have a program called My Wisconsin Woods, where we're helping woodland landowners all across the state of Wisconsin kind of understand what they can do on their own property, whether it's 5 acres or 500 acres, to have a healthy forest, do sustainable forestry practices, better wildlife management activities. And so we're connecting landowners up all across the state with different resources in their area, and kind of helping to illuminate what they can and might want to consider doing to meet their own kind of management objectives, whether it be for deer habitat or songbird habitat or forest productivity. But there's a lot of resources to landowners out there that they don't know about. And so we try to kind of be the connector of those dots out there.
Well, that's really incredible right there. I know you're about to mention something else, but before if you could hold that thought, and we could just say, let's say someone has a piece of land, how much is, is it, let's say you just have a backyard Is that big enough to get in contact?
We do. So one of our partners for this project is the Wisconsin DNR, and for the criteria to be eligible for some of their programs, you have to have 5 acres or more.
Okay.
So that's kind of our threshold for this program. It doesn't mean that if you have less, there isn't some good information that we share. So we have an e-newsletter and a website, but then what we do is kind of actively, wherever there are needs or opportunities across the state, like if you remember that big blowdown from those straight line winds up in northern Wisconsin a couple of years ago.
Yes.
We really helped, like we have a database of all the landowners in the state, and we helped landowners up there understand the state and federal programs that could help them clean up their woods and salvage the timber and those kind of things. So we kind of, we only have limited capacity. So we try to work where the need or the opportunity is greatest. But otherwise, we have background education and information going out to landowners all across the state. So anybody interested in that should check out the website, My Wisconsin Woods, and sign up for the e-newsletter, because once a month we have all sorts of programs you could sign up for, classes you could take, or just information about your woods that might be helpful and relevant to you.
That's great. And so kind of whatever you want to do with your woods, you guys can kind of cater it to that, sort of within reason, if you want to probably burn.
Well, like my point is people aren't preserving their woods. They own it for a reason. They either want to hunt on it, or they want to hike on it, or they need to get income off of it. All of those, if done as, right, have ecological benefits and opportunities. And so we want to connect people up with those, just help them be intentional about, okay, if this is what the values I want to get off the land, how do I do that best, most ecologically sensitive and thoughtfully?
Yeah. And that's a real good distinction between preserving and utilizing that. But that's right back to Aldo Leopold of being sort of a utilitarian with the land. And the more people that do, even if you want to farm or log or whatever, if you do that the right way, it's going to be a net win. Yeah. That's really cool. And then what was the other thing you were going to say before I interrupted you?
Well, I think, if unlimited budget, different opportunities. One, we just give a copy of A Sand County Almanac to everybody in the state of Wisconsin and beyond, just to get them to read and think about the world in these ways. And then the other would be, again, what we talked about is just finding these alignments of economic need and opportunity with ecological systems. So my model was the New York City drinking water, but again, it would be continuing to produce valuable timber resources in the state of Wisconsin that drive our economy and create the land health, keep the land healthy, and create recreational opportunities. And so, that innovation of connecting ecological integrity with economic opportunity is a space that just needs more time, investment, and thought.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. So it would just be finding different ways of finding those things and connecting it with people, and sort of being creative with it.
So right now we have a collaboration with the U.S. Forest Service in the eastern region, which is basically Minnesota to Missouri over to Maryland and up to Maine. So a pretty good chunk of the country. And we're looking for these stories of where communities are coming together and kind of improving land management practices to provide ecological and cultural values that return to the bigger community. And like one project or effort's called Wild Harvest, and it's about how berries and hunting and fishing produce not only dietary and caloric needs for communities, but also create local economies that need to be protected and enhanced. So that's kind of what we're on the hunt for right now, is where this is happening out there. The Menominee Forest is a great example in Wisconsin of the Menominee Nation that has managed their forest for generations in ensuring that they have an economic yield, but the forest is healthier than a lot of the surrounding forests. So again, when done right, you get healthy land and you get a healthy economy.
Yeah. And if there's one group of people or several groups of people that know how to do that better than any of us, it's the tribes, the indigenous people who have been here for a long, long time and have so much wisdom and knowledge on that goes back, as you said, generations. That's really cool to see. Well, awesome. Well, if there's kind of like a final thought or maybe like, let's do this. If there's one piece of one essay, one Aldo Leopold essay that you'd tell people to read, what would it be?
Well, I make the homework assignment pretty easy, Charlie. You just read the foreword to the book, and it's about 6 paragraphs, maybe 8. And it starts with there are some who can live with wild things and some who cannot. These essays are the delights and dilemmas of one who cannot. And then he sets up what you're going to learn in the book, the little journey you're going on. He puts forward this idea of a land ethic, that we're all connected to one another in the land. And so all you got to do is read the foreword. And if the hook isn't set, read it again. But my guess is they'll say, oh, there's something in here. And then otherwise you can just open the book anywhere and start reading.
That is a nice thing about the collection of essays. You can just pull it up and you get what you get. You get a lot of cool stuff, fun stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking this. What are those ducks? I don't have my glasses on. What kind
Those
of
are pintails. Those are decoys that were made by Aldo's oldest son, Starker.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm embarrassed I can't see the kind of duck, but it's too blurry for me right now.
It's a little far away.
Yeah.
Keep you guessing.
Do you like my loon?
I like the loon, yeah.
Hannah made it.
Really?
She's my producer sitting right here. Yeah, she made it out of paper mache, and it's got a...
Paper mache? Wow.
Is it paper mache, Hannah? Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's pretty badass.
Do you have a website? Those available to the public?
Hannah, do you have a website? You want to shout it out here?
HannahMilos.com.
HannahMilos.com.
I would be open to a commission.
She'd be open to a commission. Well, there you go.
Right.
All right. If the foundation ever needs a paper mache loon, a little duck in a tux, rock and roll. There you have it. Well, this was great, man. Thank you so much for coming on and for all your hard work. It's a huge benefit to Wisconsin. So thank you very much.
Well, likewise, thanks for having us, and keep taking Wisconsin to the world. Love the sense of humor and the poignancy with which you deliver your content.
Oh, thank you. I am trying. Oh, shoot. I forgot our biggest question. Okay. We asked this to everybody. What makes you say cripes?
What makes you say cripes?
Like, what's a pet peeve? Well, it's like, cripes. Or something real good, like, cripes. That's pretty sweet. Usually it's a pet peeve, though.
Usually it's a pet peeve. And it would usually be holy cripes. It would be...
Sure.
How I would say it. So
holy cripes.
It's something kind of extreme. I would say I reserve it probably for not just a pet peeve, but like, holy cripes, what are you talking about? Like, you have really done some kind of sin against the universe that would lead to the holy cripes response and reaction from me.
And what would be an example?
Oh, well, I just had this happen somewhat. A deer ran into me, into the side of my truck.
Holy cripes.
I didn't hit the deer. The deer hit me. Holy cripes.
Did the deer survive?
Deer did not survive.
Oh, no. Did you get a dent in the car?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Did you bring the deer home with you?
Couldn't find the deer. No.
Oh, no. Ran off and...
Yeah.
Now she's with the coyotes.
Yeah.
And that's why we need more wolves.
Yeah.
Right there.
Especially in southern Wisconsin.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, holy cripes indeed. Well, thank you for that. You did real good. See, that one too hard. Well, thank you again for coming on, and watch out for deer. All right.
All right.
Folks, that's all for now. Huge thanks to Buddy for coming on the show. If you want to support the Aldo Leopold Foundation, go to aldoleopold.org. And you can also follow them at Aldo Leopold Foundation, and on X, it's at Aldo Leopold FDN. So there you have it, folks. And thank you for listening. And thanks to Colleen Maraca and Hannah Milos for producing and editing. And everybody, enjoy your December out there and watch for deer. We'll see you soon.
So roll out the barrel and get the band brewing. Life's got you down, just keep her moving. It's on Wisconsin, the Badgers say it's the old Wisconsin Wisconsin Jubilee.
You know, sometimes when you're ice fishing, you put your foot in the walleye hole and go ass over tea kettle and you think you're done. No, you gotta keep her moving.